Good afternoon and welcome back to Behind the Business. I am your host, Amanda Llewellyn, with my co-host, Carina Harvey. Thanks for joining us today. So a little bit about myself. I am from London originally, have been in the UAE for just over 10 years now, and I am one of the co-founders of the Mortgage Boutique. Carina, do you want to tell people a little bit about yourself before we get started?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Amanda. So for those who don't know me, I'm an identity and style advisor. I've just branched out into interior design as well. Still fairly new on my entrepreneurial journey. I've been an entrepreneur now for the last 2 years, nearly 20 years in corporate. Can't believe I'm saying that. And I've been in the UAE for 11 years.
So we'll just give everybody a little bit of a context setting in regards to why we started Behind the Business. As Carina just mentioned, she's only been an entrepreneur for a couple of years. I've been doing it for coming up to 3 years now myself as well. It's been quite a steep learning curve. I think that's probably a bit of an understatement, to say the least. But we just realised on our journeys that business looks very different when you're doing it as an entrepreneur for yourself. It's been a very steep learning curve, as I said. And with that, we just found that we were having quite a lot of business chats, didn't we? And it's great to have people to have these conversations with. But I think more importantly, it's about sharing these conversations as well. And then also being open to see what's going on for other people in the world of business as well. So yeah, do you want to kick us off with today's topic?
Yeah, thank you, Amanda. So we've chosen defining your ideal client because I think we all start off with a sort of idea as to how to define our ideal client. But the one thing that we keep talking about is just how much that evolves over time. So those are some of the aspects that we want to cover today. I think the more your business evolves in direction, branding, messaging, the more you work with your clients, you really start to establish, exactly what your ideal client looks like. And without having clarity here, it just feels like everything that you do can be a little bit scattered. So we're going to talk about how we started in terms of identifying what does the ideal client look like, how that has evolved, how pricing, abundance, energy plays a role in this, but also recognizing the fact it evolves, and I guess how we've kind of kept on top of that, really. So if we start off, Amanda, with the first topic, so how we started and how it's evolved for each of us. Do you want to kick off with your experience?
Yes, I think I'm probably a bit different to you from what we've discussed, because I don't think that I actually had a kind of original ideal client. I was very much, well, I want to help people. This is what I want to do, and I can help anyone. That lovely word that everybody loves. And then you just think, anyone. And of course, through the journey of business, that gets tested, right? So you start working with anyone, and then you start realizing the people that you enjoy working with, the people that you can really help, the people that value what you do, and how that relationship looks. So for me, then I thought to myself, right, I need to establish who my ideal client is. I don't want to, and I can't just be helping anybody because it doesn't align with my offering, the way I work, how it looks for me. But I think that you were quite focused, I think, from what we've shared about when you started out on the ideal.
I think so. I kind of started really with the problem that I felt like my client had and how I can resolve it. And that was great. And because obviously that geared me in terms of how I was going to design my content, hoping that obviously content would convert. But I think definitely there's more to it. The more you start working with clients, you start to factor in, it's not just what you're trying to solve, it's how you're trying to solve it. And actually, is that client looking to work in that similar way? So if I give you an example of that, so for me, with my clients directly, accountability on their part is a huge factor, because if we agree on an action plan, then I really want them to be able to try out those actions that we've agreed on so that they can get the absolute best out of the experience. But that only really comes with time and experience of working with people. And now actually a lot of my content, I channel that same messaging into it, because those are the type of clients that I'm now trying to attract as well. which I think you do as well, but you started from a different place, right?
Yeah, because I think so for you, you're establishing a problem and you're resolving that. As in, for me, I'm providing a service to give a better client experience. So we're starting from a different start point, if that makes sense. Because for my clients, it's whether they want to work with me and have that experience. You want your clients to be really involved. I actually don't want my clients to be as involved because they don't need to be. That's the whole point of me managing the process. And so in effect, I'm like a project manager for them, whereby they get full transparency and visibility and knowledge without having to actually execute the work themselves. Once they pass everything over that they need to me, then it's about communications and experience for my clients. As in, your clients tend to need to be more involved and hands-on, because obviously it's their space, it's their identity, it's very much about them as a person. As in, for me, it's very much the service that I provide for them. But I think one key thing that I've learned from working with various clients, and I find that I just naturally attract this, is people with similar energy to me. I think where we don't do paid marketing and it's all referral and recommendation, that is, it's just allowed us to show up in the way that we need to, because otherwise it's just people coming through like LinkedIn or clicking on a calculator, like they don't really know about me as a person. As in, if it's people within my network and previous clients passing, friends or family to me as a recommendation, they know already how I work. They're personally seeing alignment, so they're kind of pre-qualifying my client in a sense just by the referral or recommendation through either knowing me or having worked with me personally, and that makes a big difference for me.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's that qualification process of energy, but also the ways in which you work as well, and being very honest about that as well, right? Because we can speak to various different clients, but we're not going to be able to help every single one in exactly the same way, because it may well be that they want to work in entirely different ways. And I think if you flip it as well, so if you think about it from a client's perspective, if they want to work in a certain way and it's not necessarily the way in which I work, it's better that I'm honest with them, because otherwise they're going to engage in a service with me and actually it's not going to be the right kind of relationship for them. So all it's going to do is leave them feeling, aggrieved or, mismanaged in terms of those expectations. So I think that's a really important part of it, but really being very honest with that as well from the outset, who are you going to work well with? And who are you truly going to be able to help as well, I think.
Yeah, I think it's about aligning the values, isn't it? Because if people don't see the value in what you're doing for them, then there's not going to be that appreciation. There's not going to be that synergy within the relationship. If people, I don't know, if they're not excited to work with you, then for me, if I'm going to an expert, I want to have a connection with them. I want to know that they're going to work the way that I like to work, and that I'm going to feel seen and heard. Even if I'm not managing the process necessarily, I want them to understand, okay, this is how I see it. And then they can explain to me, okay, this is actually how it works. This is how it will look. This is how I'd manage it for you. Does that align for you? Ultimately, do our values align? Because if they don't, there's going to be constant friction in that relationship. And with people like ourselves and what we're doing, there's constant communications. There's a relationship being built and evolving throughout the process. So if there's not alignment in values there, it's not going to work. The energy is going to be off. So that's why if you at least establish who your ideal clients are from the outset, you can determine, okay, are we a good fit for each other? It's no different than if you go for a job interview, right?
Yeah.
You are going to interview for a position as a candidate, as much as you're actually going to see what the company is about and see if you actually want to work for them and if they're a right fit for you. It's no different when you're going out to market to find a service provider. Even more so, I think, in such personal services like with your finances or your home, your personal space, your identity. you know, you need to invest time to really see, okay, before we go down this journey together, are we a good fit ultimately?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also as well, we've talked a lot about pricing recently as well. I think pricing plays a huge role. And we've looked at, you know, how our pricing has evolved as well. Because I think when you start, and, you know, for me as well, the financial consideration did actually play a role, but not really to what's the word? Not an expansive degree. I think it was kind of like, you know, this is what I'm going to charge. Does that sound okay? Maybe looking at competitive pricing as well, which obviously you want to do. That's not the wrong thing to do. But I think only you can value your time as well. And likewise, what you really want, hopefully, are the kind of clients that are going to value your time as well. So I think pricing definitely plays a role in that. Very important.
Yeah, I hear a lot of people say, well, I can't charge that because other people in that space and in the market aren't charging that. You can charge what you like. You'll attract the kind of clients that see the value in that and want to pay that. If you price yourself out of the market, that's something that you need to be mindful of, yes. But ultimately, as you say, you need to see the value in what you're bringing. And it's uncomfortable. I think people don't like talking about money. Obviously, for me and my clients, it's what we first and foremost talk about. So I don't have an issue. I'm very transparent about my fees. Yes, there are people out there that don't charge anything. You know, the bigger outfits. There's also the bigger outfits out there that do charge an upfront fee. You know, people's time is money. And I feel personally that if you have a commitment from the outset from both parties, it sets an expectation. There's a form of recall. If you don't pay for it, how can you expect it? And if it's not what you expected, where's your form of recourse? It doesn't set out an SLA, you know, a service level agreement there with the client. If they've paid a certain amount and you've said you're going to deliver, then those deliverables are there.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
And there's a commitment as well. So for me personally, it then determines who's window shopping and who's actually ready to go. Because I don't mind if you're not ready. Absolutely, you can be in my pipeline, of course. And I'm always here to give, you know, overall guidance up to the point where I can, free of charge. Absolutely, knowledge is power. I don't gatekeep that stuff. I think that everybody deserves to have knowledge, but it's how it's executed. You know, that's then when it comes into the role of, okay, it's the service that you're availing through me for the execution of actually, you know, how this process is going to look for you. I mean, I don't know, how do you generally get your clients? Is it only through referral and recommendation as well?
Yeah, so different sources really. So referral, recommendation, but also through LinkedIn as well, which is completely cold. So there, you know, what I would try to do is have at least kind of 2 discovery calls so that I can start to build a relationship, but really start to underpin whether or not the person is ready to kind of go through that level of, used to call it coaching, now I call it advisory, but the level of work that they also need to put in to be able to go through that level of transformation as well.
And again, it comes back to, doesn't it, that commitment of whether they're ready to commit to you as a client. And I love that. I think if you can establish that from the outset and then you agree, okay, we're going to work together, this is how it's going to look, it's a great match, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's about everybody understanding what's required from them throughout the process. Like my clients understand that they need to give me a certain amount of documentation and information to then allow me to go and do my job for them. It's exactly the same for you. Your clients need to understand that they've got a certain commitment of time and energy that they've got to give into this, and they've got to show up to a certain extent to allow you to then take that to the next level and move them along their journey. I think it's another good thing with ideal clients is about, you know, it's about boundaries. You know, people think because you're a service provider, they just get access to you constantly. That's not ideal for me. I'm very much about work-life balance. You know, I can't really do much for my clients if the banks are closed at 10 o'clock at night. It's just not practical. And again, it's about respecting the investment that everybody's putting in, the time and energy that's going into it. And I think that the discovery calls are great. I always do an initial call with my clients. because I think it just sets the tone from the outset. You can establish pretty soon on, and I think it's good to have like I have a questionnaire that I run through with clients, but I also, those questions are in order of priority, because certain questions I can establish right from the outset, whether they're an ideal client for me and I'm a good fit for them, but also whether they're ready, or if there's things that they need to go away and do to get themselves in the position that they need to in order to move forward to the next steps of starting the mortgage process and their property purchase journey. Do you have a fixed questionnaire that you have for clients for your discovery calls, or does it flow a bit more?
I have fixed questions in terms of, understanding, why they've got to the position that they have, why they're interested in working with me, why they're interested in this type of transformation. But yeah, I think naturally it kind of flows a little bit more depending on the direction of the conversation. But that's why, particularly if it's somebody that I haven't really spoken to before, because sometimes people approach me and I know a little bit about them already. So then that's easier because naturally I have that kind of background already. But if I don't know them at all, then I'd rather stagger it into a couple of calls, give them a little bit of information for them to be able to actually think about, so that they can decide whether or not it's right for them, because that's really key.
Yeah, I think as well, people are afraid to say no.
Yeah.
And it's actually okay to say, we are not a good fit, or I am not best placed to provide this service to you. Whether it's around price point, whether it's around time and energy commitment, however that looks, if it's not quite a fit, it is okay to listen to your gut feeling and say no. I hear this a lot with my friends that are doing business. They're like, oh, but I should really take it, I've not got anything else booked. I'm like, but if you fill that space with something you don't want, that space is then gone, and it doesn't leave space for your ideal client to come in. And it is a little bit about holding the faith in that respect. This is what you've got to hold space for it as well.
Yeah, and that, I think that's kind of like, what's the word? It's like the abundance factor, isn't it? And I think this is why our process continues to evolve. I think that's a really key point as well. This isn't a sort of one-time analysis and now I understand what my ideal client looks like. Actually, the calls that I just spoke about, the processes that you just spoke about, these are the things that continue to evolve. We change them every few months based on what we learn about what we're doing. But actually being able to say no to people as well, that gives us even further information to be able to say, okay, and this was something that I hadn't considered before, and now I can factor that into that process too. And just knowing that there are more people out there that you can work with and that you can help. So it doesn't have to be a yes every single time.
Absolutely. It's just people don't like to say no when they're self-employed. They feel like they're missing a revenue opportunity. But if you've got the right ideal clients and you're saying yes to the right clients, the money will catch up, space and time. It'll all catch up and it will all align. I think, in summary of, what we've just chatted about, I think it is okay to say no. The main goal is, what do you want to do for your client? How do you want to help your client? And then that comes back to, okay, well, are we matched? Do they want my help? Because if you want to help and they don't necessarily want it, they're not going to want to pay for it. There's a misalignment already. And I think just remembering that I would encourage people from our chat today to ask themselves, do I have an ideal client? B, have I scripted that and written it down? And what does that look like? And also C, when am I going to next review that?
Yeah.
And even if you don't change anything when you review it, at least you're keeping yourself accountable to change it. So yeah, that would be like my kind of 3 key things from the topic we've talked about today.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the main goal ultimately is that you want to be able to help your clients. So it's making sure that you're funneling down to that exact type of person or exact type of persons that you can help. Because that's the end goal at the end of the day. You want to have a brilliant relationship with them. You want to know that whatever it is that you're providing to them can be fulfilled in the best way. And it's actually a two-way street in most cases. and just making sure that you have that alignment in terms of expectations, ways of working, but also the energy piece, as you said.
Yeah. So I think I'm actually going to invite people that have either jumped on the live now, and if they have, great, and if not, that are catching the replay. It would be really interesting if people want to drop in the comments, have you got an ideal client? Do you know? Like, you know, simple yes or no. It would be really interesting to see where other people are at.
Yeah. And also, what did you find? Hopefully found something interesting or to take away from this conversation, but what would you like to see more of? Is this a conversation you would like to see expanded, or are there other topics that you would like to see us cover as well? We're actually not going to be here in 2 weeks' time, are we? Because it's going to be Eid. So we're going to be here in 4 weeks' time.
So yeah, we will jump back on then, and we'll see what people come up with the topics. If there's, I mean, we've got topics that we want to talk on. We have loads that we always talk on around business, but if there's anything specific people, you know, are keen for us to kind of touch on and get into, and we'll always be revisiting these anyway, then yeah, please feel free to drop in anything to the comments. And in the meantime, wishing you all a fabulous weekend.
Yes. Happy weekend. Thanks, everyone.